All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Self-Directed Podcast. We've got another fun episode planned today. We've got Heather Drabant and Mia Liang, both Praxis alumni, who have just released a new ebook, What College Won't Teach You. Awesome project. So many cool stories embedded in the book itself, and I want to turn it over to them. Heather, Mia, thank you both for coming on to Self-Directed today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, I'll turn it over. I would love to get, the introductions, and then let's just dive right into the contents of the book.
Great. Go ahead, Mia.
Sounds good. Will do. So I am Mia Liang. I am currently a SEO specialist at a digital marketing agency called Revenue River. And I went through Praxis in September of 2019, which is almost 2 years ago, which is absolutely insane. But that's totally fine. No worries, don't feel old at all. And yeah, this ebook was really started as like a joke between us, and it's been so cool to see how it's grown and where we are now compared to where we were when we first started this project.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm Heather Drabant. I'm currently doing freelance writing and content development out of Washington. I went through Praxis in August of 2019. I can't believe how long it's been already. It's baffling, truly, how time flies. I just can't believe that the book actually happened, because it really was just a joke and just in passing. And then one thing turned into another, and here we are.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book. I want to kick it off, and I want to hear what inspired it. I know that you both kind of said we were on different calls. It kind of ended up turning into a project, but what inspired the contents of it? I mean, it's literally titled What College Won't Teach You. So I'm sure there are some foundational lessons there that you all both learned getting out in the real world as well. But where did it start? What was the inspiration? And we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah, definitely. If I really rack my brain, I think it was the call that Mia told me the story about the spider.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes,
yes, that was the call. And we were like, this is ridiculous. I don't remember what my contribution that call was, but it was something equally as ridiculous, yes. I'm sure. And we just realized, hey, we should, wouldn't it be funny if we put together like a list of all the crazy stuff that's happened since we moved and started our apprenticeships and all of that. And I'm like, let's just do it. Let's do it. Next time we meet, let's have a list ready. And yeah, that's where we took it from.
All right. What's the spider story, Mia? Don't ruin the book, but like, give us the quick preview.
I was in a meeting with my bosses, like little apprenticeship meeting with my bosses, Zoom meeting, because everything was remote, pandemic situation. And I'm sitting just looking at my laptop like I am now, and a spider fell from the ceiling onto my laptop. And it was a live spider, like it was starting to move around, and the panic in my heartbeat and just everything went through the roof. I had no idea what to do or like how to go about it. So I'm pretty sure I just like really carefully turned my camera and my mic off and like silently screamed, and then grabbed a tissue and killed it, and just like came back on and pretended like it was totally fine. But I'm telling that story to Heather, and her being like, this, like, why, how does this happen? Why does this happen? Like, a spider fell off the ceiling onto your laptop in the middle of a meeting. Like, what are the odds that this occurs?
Those are the fun bloopers as you look back on, any point in your career, but especially when you're first starting out, and a lot of new firsts. That's the blooper reel. That's the fun thing in between 100%. The lines of everything everybody tells you. So, would love to hear a little bit more about like what are some of the big lessons in the book? What were some of those big things that college doesn't teach you? Things that you felt like were new, shocking realizations as you got out in the real world and you both started your careers.
I don't want to cut you off. I'm like waiting. Okay. Well, for the first thing that came to my mind was just really how important communication is. You think you know that, and then you're in a team every day and you're like, oh, communication is that important. So like that was the main thing that I had to really like refine in my apprenticeship, was just how I communicated, when I communicated, and what it means to be a good communicator. And I think that we have a whole section just focused on communication, because it really is so vital to success in really any industry or company you're going to be in. Next to communication, I think there's like the finer like dance of like sharing versus oversharing versus undersharing that I had to really learn, because like it's so tempting to just like pour your heart out sometimes. If somebody asks, oh, how was your weekend? You don't have to tell them all the details, you know?
Yeah.
They only need to know so much. But those are the two things that come to mind.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Mia, what about you?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm definitely on the opposite side of the spectrum of Heather in terms of sharing. I am very much so known for undersharing and just kind of like doing like letting people know the bare minimum of what's going on in my life. But another thing to add to that is I really struggled with sharing my work and working out loud and knowing how valuable that is. And that's definitely something that I learned through the Praxis program, but then seeing how applicable it truly was to the workforce, and being like, shoot, I really wish that I would have worked more out loud throughout the program so that I could have been more comfortable showing a spreadsheet that's halfway done just to make sure that it's okay and not feeling ashamed or worried about it at all.
Yeah, for sure. And Heather, you spent a lot of your early, kind of your first step out of the world remote. Mia, do you go into the office, or are you mostly remote?
I have never been in an office before.
Okay.
I moved to San Francisco when I was 17 in March of 2020, the week that San Francisco shut down. And then I moved back to Kansas about 5 months later. So spent March to, I think it was August of 2020 in San Francisco. And ever since then, the headquarters for the company I work for has been anywhere from 2 hours to however far away San Francisco is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So you're both predominantly remote, which adds another layer of complexity to communication, and not just like best practices, but figuring out the right balance to strike between oversharing, undersharing, looking for ways to be valuable in the company, especially if you're in a new environment, you're trying to get acclimated to the company culture, how things work, find answers to questions in many cases. Like, what was that experience like? Were there any, big strikeouts you had earlier in your career, navigating those fine lines, especially being remote? Were there any big takeaways, advice that you would give, whether it's in the book or not, about, how to draw those lines and how to improve communication as somebody that's just starting out your career?
Oh yeah. The first thing that I thought of, let me think, okay, how to frame this. So one of the first projects I did, because I started in product support with my apprenticeship, was work on these 2 blog posts that were supposed to be tutorials walking through different features of the platform. I was kind of like a learning management system. So it was kind of talking about the features, all of that. And it was supposed to cover 2 roles that people could use in the platform. So I got what I thought were complete directions on how to write those. So I went and wrote them and posted them. Well, I checked and put them in Slack, and she said, oh, approved. So I posted them. And then she's like, that's not correct. One of those roles does not exist for customers. It's only for team members. And I'm like, oh, lovely. Okay. So I had to go back in, quickly unpublish, and completely redo one of them. So the moral of that story is ask questions about the projects that you're handed. It sounds so obvious, but in the moment when somebody says, go do this thing, you think, oh, I should just know how to do that. I'll just go do it now. But you got to ask the questions, or you're going to make more work for yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely asking questions and not being scared of asking questions or scared that you'll look like you don't know what you're doing or you're not qualified for the role. You're starting at a new job and you're starting at a new company, and every company does something different. So it doesn't matter if you're in the same position that you were at your last company, it's going to be different. The workflows, the way people communicate, the project management system, it all changes and varies drastically from company to position to country or state that you live in, and not fearing asking questions and being very upfront about where you're at, where you're going, what you want to get out of working, and what you want to add to the company are all very, very important things to keep in mind.
Yeah. Awesome. So those are all great insights as far as like starting a career, especially as it relates to like building up the muscle of proper communications in the workplace. So what about outside the workplace? What were some of the big life lessons you are not only going and starting a new chapter in life, but you're moving to new cities, both of you, starting a new chapter amidst moving to a new city, which is like a whole can of chaos. There's so many different things you have to learn for the first time. What were some of those big ones for you as you went out into the real world?
You want to take that one first?
Sure, I'll go for it. Yeah, so I feel like our experience, or at least my experience, was a bit different than what your traditional moving out experience would be, since I was underage and in the middle of a pandemic. Two things that I really would not recommend anyone else doing if they were thinking about moving or starting. But for me, probably one of the biggest things that I learned in my personal life was how important it is for me to get outside and not stay so cooped up. Just taking a walk on a daily basis, or just standing in the sun outside for like 5 minutes, or figuring out how to communicate with friends and family that are across the country now and are in a different time zone. And I'm not entirely sure what's going on in their lives, but I want to stay up to date, but I don't want to bug them every minute of every day, just trying to figure out what's going on. Little things like that, where they're kind of similar to what I was learning in terms of communication and figuring out how things work in the workforce, but just translating that to my personal life.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I have to second the whole getting outside thing. Absolutely. I spent probably like a solid month and a half just pretty much inside 24/7. Would not recommend. And I had no idea where I was, completely new area, new surroundings. So I didn't know that literally, like, I don't know, a 5-minute walk was this beautiful park with this river. And I finally found it that fall. And I was just, I almost cried. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, Jesus. Like, I finally got outside, and it made such a world of difference. You don't think it does, but there's something psychological there that you got to get outside whenever you can.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. Also important thing, especially if you're working remotely, let alone if you're working remotely in a pandemic, where you're locked down and your only interaction is digital. It can be, that can be such a drain on your energy if you're, one, not around people, but two, not getting outside, getting exercise. It's probably unhealthy too. So, not a doctor. This is not medical advice, but probably unhealthy too. So, all right. I want to hear just one more lesson each from you from the book. Like, what's one more favorite or fun lesson or story from the book that you'd love to share with our listeners? And we'll take it from there.
A big theme for me was imposter syndrome. I don't know if I have a specific story about that, but it was throughout the whole time. You really don't feel capable, but you are, and that was a big part of what I took away from my whole apprenticeship experience, is that no, I am capable. I can do this. And with imposter syndrome, everybody feels it. Even like the person you look up to, they feel it too. And that's just something that you should always keep in mind when you're trying to do new projects, new roles. Everybody starts somewhere, and you're capable. You can do it. That's what really it's really important.
Great. Mia, what about you?
Sort of piggybacking off of what Heather said, my biggest thing would probably be not being afraid of making mistakes while simultaneously owning up to your mistakes. So making mistakes is human. Obviously, everyone does it. Even if you're senior level at whatever company you're at, you're bound to make a mistake. That's just human error, human nature. It's what happens. But realizing that making a mistake doesn't mean that you are human or flawed. It means that you're actually human. And it also means that you need to own up to that, because that's just a part of it. And seeing people own up to their mistakes as well as owning up to your mistakes yourself just creates a really good environment between your coworkers or your family, even just anyone around you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too. I think early in your career, especially, you don't want to be found out. I remember I do a lot of writing, reflecting on early career stuff too. And I was reading a piece I wrote, several years ago, and reflecting like the first year on the job and a new role, and walking in, you feel like this expectation of I've got to be I've got to be able to have an answer when somebody asks me a question. I don't want to be an imposter, but I don't want to be incompetent. I don't want to be incapable. I don't want to not have the answer. And I think sometimes that pressure leads you to make stupid decisions instead of actually being like, hey, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to get you an answer, or I'm going to go figure it out. And then like hustling your way to make up for any learning gap that you don't have, as opposed to like feeling this immense pressure and almost paranoia, which makes it even more difficult because I think it creates additional pressure to fear the mistakes. And that's the way we learn is you got to go out, you got to get a lot of reps, you got to run experiments and try things. So that's a great lesson for anybody starting out. And honestly, even as you go throughout your career, don't be afraid to make mistakes. So I know you all both, this project kind of came together and you're both working remotely together on this project from different perspectives, have different stories and lessons that you wanted to share. Talk to us a little bit about how the project came together. From the original phone call, it's a joke, but what were some of your favorite points as this turned into something substantial and real instead of just talk?
For sure. Honestly, one of my favorite points was after that first call where we were joking about it. We said we'd meet again in a month. And then a month went by, and I can't remember if it was either Heather or I that reached out, but we reached out and we're like, hey, you have that list? Do you want to meet up? And the other person was just like, yeah, I do have that list. I do want to meet up. Are you free like tomorrow at this time? And we were like, yeah, sure. Let's go for it. And then we hopped on the call and we were like, this is kind of weird. This is a thing. Like we're actually doing it, because so many people say that should be a book or like that should be a movie or whatever, insert your mode of creativity. Yeah. But so few people follow through. And the fact that we were just kind of like joking about it, and even I feel like for like the first month or two, we were still kind of like, is this a joke? Like, where are we going with this? What is this? Like, it was really just a passion project of ours and kind of like our little COVID baby and our thing that honestly kind of got me through COVID and got me through the lockdown and everything, because I had something that I could pour myself into. And I had a reason for the stories and all of the things and the spiders falling and everything that I went through, and I could teach people through it. And so having that motivation, the drive, and making sure that other people didn't have to go through and learn all the lessons that I did.
Yep. That's awesome. What about you, Heather?
Yeah. I mean, just having that consistent like meeting, because we met every week, but like a year, I think. We met very consistently, and that did a lot for me as well in the pandemic, just having that structure and having something, like Mia said, to really pour into and just do something with all these lessons that you're learning. You don't want them to just, disappear on the wind. You want to have somewhere to put them and apply them and help people, avoid some of the same pitfalls that maybe you had fallen into. It's just, I'm just so glad that it happened and that we really were consistent. And it's hard to believe still.
Yeah. Well, I want to commend you both, applaud you both. I know it is not an easy undertaking at all. There are, everywhere you look, there's somebody who says, hey, I should write a book. You should write a book. It's the easiest thing in the world to say it, but sitting down and doing the hard work of actually get it down on paper and not just stopping there, but then going back and killing the thing that you love and you've poured your soul into and editing it again and then doing another draft and then sharing it with people, it can be embarrassing and intimidating. And it's part of the creative process is letting those ideas decant out in the real world. And now you both got something to show. It's not just this idea or this empty talk. It's you have something tangible to show, add your portfolios. And I'm sure that, you both grew a lot, but also built some tangible skills along the way. So any final thoughts about the book you'd like to share? Where can people find copies if they want to check it out?
Oh, yeah. I had one other thing to do with the process, which was beta readers. If anybody out there is planning on doing an ebook, you need beta readers. You need them. I'm just going to say that because we didn't really have that moment of, until after we got our first, I feel like, well, for me anyways, we got that first round of notes was really a game changer. So that's a little snippet of advice.
It definitely changed the trajectory of where the book was and how much of ourselves we put into it before we sent it out to the beta readers. It was a lot more lesson based and a lot less story. And here's why, and here's how I learned this lesson. And there was a lot less personality within the book, honestly. And there were a lot fewer stories. And getting the feedback from our beta readers saying, hey, we want to know more about you. We want to know how you learn this or why you learn this or why you think this is important, and really applying it and like I said earlier, not looking at the beta readers giving us feedback as a failure, but looking at it as a lesson and a way to improve the book. And it really was a game changer in terms of where it is now versus where it was when they were first reading it.
That's awesome. It's awesome to have that feedback and that cheerleading group along the way as you finish, and maybe harsh critics too to help you refine your vision. So, all right, people are listening. They want to go check out your book. Where do they find it?
Oh, it's Amazon. Right now, it's just Amazon. Yeah, I think we haven't discussed other platforms yet, but that might be in the future.
Okay, great. Well, I'll find a copy here and link to it in the show notes. Awesome. Thank you both for joining us on the Self-Directed. This has been another episode, and we'll be back again soon.